Alright, yeah! Thank God for fantasy football. I'm Buster Brown, and the show, it's called Redemption Rehab. And if you tuned in today, it's for one reason. It's because you want to start winning championships in fantasy football. Here we are on our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com. And today, we're talking about our 2020 top workhorse running backs in the NFL. The reason they call these guys workhorse or bell cow running backs is because they get the high volume of carries on the teams they play for. If you remember one thing about fantasy football, never forget that the players you choose in your draft get a ton of volume for whatever position they play. Volume is king. It's so important. So buckle up, get out your popcorn, and let's head over to the chalkboard
and check out the facts.
Okay, here we are talking about our workhorse, or rather bell cow running backs. They're going to lead some teams in your fantasy football leagues this year. You want to get your workhorse or bell cow running backs coming into your draft as early as possible. Why? Because later in your draft, they're not going to be available. And the other thing is, when it comes to your waiver wire later in the season, they're just not going to be there. So you want to get them early and often. Let's take a look at some of the facts. On the left side of our screen, we have a company called RT Sports, where we're going to look at the players we're talking about and the handcuffs behind them. And on the right side of your screen, we're going to look at Fantasy Football Calculator, and we're going to go to the ADP sheet for a 12-man PPR. We're going to examine everything so you know exactly who you're going to be taking in your upcoming drafts and where to take them on your draft board. Let's start in alphabetical order with the Arizona Cardinals and Kenyon Drake. As you can see right here, Kenyon Drake is the workhorse running back for the Arizona Cardinals. His handcuff is Chase Edmonds, and rookie Eno Benjamin should get some playing time, but don't expect a lot from him. Probably should go undrafted in your league. Why do we like Kenyon Drake? Well, let's take a look at what he did last year. These are the numbers for Kenyon Drake from last year. He played for Miami at the beginning of the year, and as you can see right here in his points, didn't exactly do much. But then he got traded over to the Arizona Cardinals, and he started putting up double digits before he found his stride towards the end of the season. And this is why everybody's high on him this year, is these numbers down here. He became a workhorse running back for Arizona late in the season last year. So let's take a peek and see where his ADP is in this upcoming season in 2020. Okay, here we are on Fantasy Football Calculator, and we're checking out Kenyon Drake's ADP sheet. And this is where he is on the draft board. Right now, he is going in the first round, towards the end of the first round, in a 12-man PPR league. This is risk. This is really high risk, high reward. It's a little too high for me. I can't see doing it there. I kind of have... I would be taking Kenyon Drake down in here somewhere after Chris Godwin. I like all these players a lot better. If you do pull the trigger on Kenyon Drake in 2020, this is about where you're going to have to take him in this area. But I like all these running backs better. Austin Ekeler, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, Nick Chubb. I'd be looking to get Kenyon Drake down in here. But the problem is he's not going to be available there because people are taking him at the end of the first round and the beginning of round 2. He's a workhorse running back. I'm not suggesting you take him until the end of round 2. Let's go check out another workhorse running back we like. We're going to do this in alphabetical order. So after Arizona comes the Atlanta Falcons and Todd Gurley. Okay, here we are looking at the Atlanta Falcons workhorse running back, bell cow, Todd Gurley. He no longer plays for the Los Angeles Rams. They had to cut him. Didn't have the money to pay him. He had big money. He's got a bad knee. But he signed a $5 million deal with the Atlanta Falcons for 1 year. Falcons are going to use him. The offensive line for the Falcons is pretty decent. Got a couple rookies out in here from last year. These guys over here are all pretty good. So I tell you what, I do like Todd Gurley. His backup, according to this, is Brian Hill. But I do like his handcuff also would be considered Ito Smith or Brian Hill. Ito Smith hurt his neck last year, had neck surgery. So we're not sure if he's going to be ready for the beginning of the season. He says he is. He's a better running back than Brian Hill. And that would be your handcuff if you draft Todd Gurley. Let's head over and check out and see what Todd Gurley did last year. Well, these are the stats right here on Todd Gurley. And he didn't disappoint, even with a bad knee. Look at the points he scored every week. 26, 18. Had the bad knee, missed some games this week. He actually produced. I mean, look at some of these points at the end of the season. Look at his rushing TDs right here. He was just rushing the ball for touchdowns. That's what Atlanta's going to use him for. And he also catches the ball out of the backfield. As you can see here, 7 receptions here, 3, 4, 3. The guy can catch the ball if he has to, and he will in Atlanta. So I do like Todd Gurley. Let's see where Todd Gurley is on the average draft position chart. Okay, here we are on Fantasy Football Calculator looking at their draft board for 2020 on their ADP sheet for a 12-man PPR league. And as you can see right here, Todd Gurley's going at the end of the round 2. I kind of like him more in this area. I like him kind of in this area right here with James Conner, Leonard Fournette, and David Johnson. I kind of like him more than Chris Carson and Le'Veon Bell and Melvin Gordon. So if you can get him in here, middle of round 3, that's where I think he should be going. I would not pull the trigger on Todd Gurley in the second round simply because of his knee issues. Plus, he has concerns about COVID-19 and whether to report to camp. So you better be wary of that. And it's a new team, so we're not sure how he's going to use him. You won't see him in preseason. So I got Todd Gurley going in the middle of round 3. So I wouldn't pull the trigger on him any time before round 3. But that's where he's going. So let's take a look at some other workhorse running backs. Okay, here we are looking at workhorse running backs for the Carolina Panthers. None better than Christian McCaffrey. He led the league in just about every category, especially in a PPR league where he had like 100 catches. So this guy's probably going to be the first pick or second pick in just about every draft. I'm taking him with the first pick if I get lucky and can get a first pick in a draft. This kid's tough. His handcuff could be either one of these two guys. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I'm not high on either one of them. You could get one of them at the end of your draft or pick them up on the waiver wire after week 1 if you want. Nobody but you is going to take him unless you take Christian McCaffrey. I always think you should have your handcuffs, but in this case, you lose Christian McCaffrey, you're in big trouble anyway. Let's go over and take a look at the offensive line. They've got a pretty decent offensive line right here. All these guys have been in the league for a while. I would give it definitely a B-. I definitely like some of these guys a lot. They've got some really good wide receivers here. And of course, Teddy Bridgewater is an accurate quarterback that likes to throw the ball to his running backs. So he's going to have a big year. Let's head over to the average draft position chart and see where he's going in drafts. As you can see over here on Fantasy Football Calculator, Christian McCaffrey's going pretty much the first pick in every draft. That's where I would take him. If someone lets him slide to 2 or 3, nab him. You're lucky. I doubt it's going to happen. He's going to go 1 or 2 unless he gets injured somehow. They're not playing any preseason games as far as I could tell in 2020. So he should be ready to go and hungry to get the job done again in 2020. Let's head over and check out our next workhorse running back, and he plays for the Chicago Bears. Okay, here we are looking at a workhorse running back for the Chicago Bears, and it's this guy right here, David Montgomery. Look, he was a rookie last year. He didn't exactly produce all year, but that's who they got. This Ryan Nall's his backup. Tariq Cohen's listed ahead of him. If I took David Montgomery, I could see maybe handcuffing him with Tariq Cohen. Nall's not getting drafted by me or anybody. But why is he a workhorse? Because they just don't have anybody else around the goal line to give the ball to. The quarterback's not running the ball. David Montgomery could be a good player this year. Second year in the league. He could be a breakout player. I'm kind of iffy on him, but let's see what his offensive line's got going on. You know, these guys right here, I'm just going to tell you, if you look at some of these guys here, I'm not high on this offensive line. As far as I like Anthony Miller, and I definitely like Allen Robinson, so they definitely have some wide receivers I like. I don't know. This is a tough deal. You end up going wide receiver early. David Montgomery may be someone you want to consider. Let's go over and see what kind of points he did last year. Okay, here we have David Montgomery and what he did in this league last year. As you can see right here, he didn't exactly tear it up. He had a couple good weeks here in 8 and 9. And this is about when rookies start to hit the wall because they're only used to playing 10 games in college and in high school. Maybe he's a professional now and he understands he has to pace himself. But you can see he had a couple good games before the end of the season against good teams. I think he's in line for a breakout season. So let's head over and check out and see where he is on the average draft position chart. Okay, here we are on the average draft position sheet draft board, and we're taking a look at David Montgomery for Chicago Bears. As you can see here, he's going towards the end of round 4. I kind of like him more, probably in here. I would probably consider taking Kareem Hunt before I took him. And Devil Singletary, I don't know. That's probably round 5 is where I'm looking. So if you can get David Montgomery somewhere in that round 5, that's about where I would be pulling the trigger on him. It's in a 12-man PPR league. I really kind of not sure if he's going to have a good year. He could, but we won't know until the season starts. So if you go wide receiver heavy, you can get a workhorse running back in David Montgomery somewhere at the end of round 4, but preferably at the beginning of round 5 or somewhere in there. That's where I would be taking him. If you go early in your drafts at wide receiver and tight end, this guy will be sitting there later, and he could help you win a championship in 2020. Let's go take a look at our next workhorse running back that we like in 2020, and he plays for the Cincinnati Bengals. Here we are looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Mixon. This kid has a ton of potential. I had him on a team last year, and by week 10, I quit playing him. Look who they have. They got Giovanni Bernard as the pass-catching running back, and Travion Williams. We'll have to see who his handcuff is. Most people just go with Giovanni Bernard if they draft Joe Mixon, but we'll have to see once the season starts. I don't think anybody's drafting Travion Williams. So if you take Joe Mixon, you better pick up Giovanni Bernard as his handcuff. They've got a ton of talent on this team, as you can see here with AJ Green, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Alex Harrison, John Ross, on Tate. These are good players. I don't like any of their tight ends, to be honest with you. I kind of like this guy, Uzomah, last year, but he didn't do anything. I keep an eye on him. And their offensive line's improved. Jonah Williams was the first-round pick last year. Michael Jordan out of Ohio State. This center actually won that job over someone they drafted it, and this kid beat that guy out. I do like this guy at guard, and Bobby Hart they drafted too. So I'm telling you right now, it looks like this team could have improved a lot. So Joe Mixon's on my radar, and I do like him to a certain extent this year. Let's see his numbers from last year. Okay, these are Joe Mixon's numbers last year, and you can see right here, he had a rough year to start the year out. And I'm telling you, by week 10, man, I couldn't even put the guy on my lineup. He was not playing well. And then he turned on the jet burners. He was getting 17 points a week here for a while, and 30 against Cleveland at the end. He did put up some decent points last year, and he does catch some passes every week, as you can see in this column here. So Joe Mixon is someone you should be considering. So let's head over to the average draft position chart and see where he's going this year. Okay, here we are back on the draft board checking out Joe Mixon. I gotta tell you, man, Joe Mixon's going at the end of the first round. I got him last year in round 3, and he let me down big time. I got him at the beginning of round 3, end of round 2, somewhere in there. Now he's going at the end of round 1. Boy, I tell you, man, that's a tough one for me. I do not like Joe Mixon there. I would probably take Nick Chubb ahead of him. I would probably take Miles Sanders ahead of him. Austin Ekeler and Aaron Jones. So I got Joe Mixon. He won't be there for me. I know that. So he's not on my radar. Is the middle of round 2. And that would be the first time I would consider taking Joe Mixon in the draft. He might have a breakout year. He's due. He wants a big contract. I think the Bengals are going to wait to see how he performs and go from there. So let's check out some other workhorse running backs in 2020. And we're going to do that with one of the main players, and that's the Dallas Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, here we're talking about one of the mainstays as far as workhorse running backs, and that's this guy, Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys. He's got the reputation of putting up a lot of numbers. He always gets the ball around the goal line. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He's going to be on the playing field probably 80% of the time, so he's definitely worth a top 5 pick. His backup is Tony Pollard right here. I would consider drafting Tony Pollard as his handcuffed later in your draft. You'll probably be the only one that does, but you make sure you get him. He does have some talent at offensive line as usual, but their center's definitely a question mark. We'll see what happens. I'm not so sure about Connor Williams at guard, but the other 3 guys are really good. And of course, he's got some great wide receivers in Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. These guys are really, really good. So they've got a ton of talent. And, Dak Prescott at quarterback up here is coming into his own last year. He finished in like top 3 in scoring in most fantasy leagues. So the Cowboys are going to vie for a Super Bowl this year, or at least contend for a playoff spot. So I'd be looking at Ezekiel Elliott in one of my top 5 picks. Let's take a look at some of Ezekiel Elliott's scoring in 2020. As you can see here, Ezekiel Elliott just put up points every week. How do you not take this guy with the top 5 pick? I mean, if you go down this list right here, I mean, he produced every single week. He just rings the bell every single time he gets on the field. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, 6 catches there, 5, 6 there, 4, 7 down here, 7 down here. So he does do that, and he scores touchdowns. He does that every week, just about, in this column here. So you can't go wrong with the drafting Ezekiel Elliott. He should be a top 5 pick. I have him as a top 3 pick. I've got no problem taking him at the 3rd overall pick in a PPR or standard league. So let's head over to the average draft position sheet and see where he's basically being drafted. Okay, here we are looking at Ezekiel Elliott. This is the draft board, and he's kind of fallen. I mean, Derrick Henry's passed him up, Dalvin Cook's passed him up, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. I got Ezekiel Elliott right here at number 3. They've got him down here, and unfortunately at number 7. I gotta believe I would take Ezekiel Elliott before I would take any of these guys. So I have him at number 3. You take him where you want to. He's gonna have a big year. Hopefully, the COVID-19 thing down there in Texas, everybody plays well. I don't know. It's gonna be tough. But I think Ezekiel Elliott's worth the top 3 pick in just about every league, and you should consider taking him there. Well, we're going to keep it down there in Texas, and our next workhorse running back we're going to be looking at is with the Houston Texans. Okay, here we are looking at the workhorse running back for the Houston Texans, and it's a new face. He used to play for the Arizona Cardinals, and he was a former number 1 overall pick in some leagues a couple years ago, and his name is David Johnson. Boy, is this guy falling off the earth as far as fantasy football. I mean, he used to be a top 1 or 2 pick in every league. Not anymore, and they traded him inexplicably to the Houston Texans for DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, I'm still scratching my head over that. DeAndre Hopkins is a first-round player every year, and David Johnson, as far as fantasy football circles go, is probably a late 3rd, maybe even early 4th-round pick. He hasn't done anything in 2 years. Let's check out some of his numbers real quick so you have an idea. Actually started out the season pretty good. He had 1 bad game, and then they traded for Kenyon Drake, and as you can see, found himself in the doghouse and didn't do anything the rest of the year. He pretty much was really doing pretty decent right here. So there is some signs that the guy still wants to play football. Arizona Cardinals last year did not have a good offensive line. He goes to the Houston Texans, who have a better offensive line than Arizona had. Let's go take a look at that real quick. Here we are looking at the offensive line for Houston Texans and David Johnson. Look, Larry Tunsil's considered a top 5 left tackle. Max Sharpring and some of Titus Howard were drafted last year, so they still have a lot to prove. These other 2 guys aren't bad. So their offensive line, I would give it a B-, C+. So if they can open up some holes for him, this kid could probably make a great comeback. His handcuff is considered Duke Johnson. If I drafted David Johnson, I would make sure I had Duke Johnson on my team. It would be a good idea to have Duke Johnson. I don't see anybody else competing for that backup spot at all. They do have some decent wide receivers. No DeAndre Hopkins on their team anymore, but they want to diversify. They got Will Fuller, Randall Cobb, Kenny Stills. All these guys have been in the league for years. Their tight ends are just average at best. So I think they're going to, they got David Johnson on a 1-year contract. He's making a ton of money, $14 million this year. So they're going to use him a lot. So let's take a look at his ADP and find out where he's going over on the draft board on Fantasy Football Calculator. Okay, here we are on Fantasy Football Calculator checking out where David Johnson's average draft position is. And it's right here, mid-3rd round. I would consider taking him there. I would definitely take him after Leonard Fournette and James Conner. But this is about where he should go, which is in this 3rd round, maybe beginning of the 4th, late 3rd round. I would definitely not pull the trigger on him early 3rd round. And I definitely wouldn't do it in the 1st or 2nd. But David Johnson could help you win a league if he feels like playing football. He hasn't for the last 2 years. But I tell you what, this coach likes to run the ball, and he likes to run north and south. And if David Johnson lives up to his reputation from 2-3 years ago, kid could score some points. He was a good running back 3 years ago. Helped me win a couple championships. So, I'm telling you, he was good. So don't forget about him. So let's take a look at our next running back that we like that's a workhorse running back. And he's down there in Jacksonville, and his name is Leonard Fournette. Okay, here we are looking at the workhorse running backs for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and his name is Leonard Fournette. Look, this guy didn't score a lot of touchdowns last year. I think he only had 3, but he's on a team that doesn't plan on winning a lot of football games this year because they might be trying to win like the first pick in the draft. But he's in the last year of a contract. They're paying him decent money, and the offensive line is pretty decent. I mean, that's a good left tackle. That's a good guard, decent center, good right guard, and they drafted this Jawan Taylor guy last year. I'm gonna tell you what, this offensive line's pretty damn good. I'd have to give him a B+. You look at the wide receivers. I mean, Chris Conley, DJ Chark, D.D. Westbrook are all decent. They got a couple young people right here, and Chenault they drafted. Keelan Cole's been around for a while, and Tyler Eifert may be a sleeper at tight end this year. I mean, Tyler Eifert, if he's healthy, he's pretty good. He just hasn't been healthy for 2 or 3 years. So this team might be a surprise some people. Gardner Minshew, quarterback, I don't know, might have some good games. But I do like Leonard Fournette. Let's take a look and see where Leonard Fournette did last year as far as scoring points. I know he had a ton of receptions. Okay, here we are looking at Leonard Fournette and what he did in the PPR league last year. Like I said, he had 76 receptions last year. I'm shocked to even hear that he did that, but he did. And you can see right here, the guy didn't disappoint every week. Every week he had double digits. He had one game that he didn't, and he didn't play in week 17. So as you can see here, the guy produced. He just didn't score a lot of touchdowns last year. This year could be different. I mean, every year before this, he had double-digit touchdowns. And look at all the receptions he had. Every week, 4, 4, 6, 4, 6, 7, 5, 7. Look at this down at the end of the year. 9, 9. Man, I'm telling you what. He had 11 targets, 12 targets in some game with Gardner Minshew. So I got to tell you something, man. I know some people that are like Leonard Fournette. I'm not sure yet. I kind of do. There's a chance he might get traded, but I doubt it. This kid is going for a new contract next year. I kind of think we need to take a peek and see where he's going on the average draft position sheet, and that'll help us determine where we like him in a draft. So let's do that. Okay, as you can see right here, the average draft position right now for Leonard Fournette is round 3. He's right in the middle of round 3. I kind of like him a little more than I like James Conner. I would probably consider taking Kenny Golladay, Mike Evans, and George Kittle. So where he is about where I would be taking him. I would definitely be taking him before any of these running backs. But that's about the spot. That's a sweet spot. If you're in the 3rd round, I could see taking Todd Gurley there, Leonard Fournette, David Johnson possibly, Le'Veon Bell down the road here. Any of those guys would be a great 3rd round pick. So his handcuff is over here is Chris Thompson. He's more of a pass catching running back, as you can see where his average draft position is. This is Rockwell Armstead down here. That's probably who his handcuff is. If something were to happen to Leonard Fournette, I'd be getting this kid here, Armstead. Let's go take a look at another workhorse running back. It was amazing last year, and his name is Austin Ekeler. He plays for the Los Angeles Chargers. He had a great year, finished in the top 5 of most running backs in fantasy football on a lot of leagues. He caught a ton of passes, and he's going to be just a workhorse for the Chargers in 2020. Let's take a look at him. Okay, here we are looking at the workhorse for the Los Angeles Chargers, and his name is Austin Ekeler. Man, did this guy light it up in a PPR league. Let's check out his points. As you can see here, before Melvin Gordon came back, this guy was lighting it up every week. And in week 6, Melvin Gordon came back and his points fell off. He still got some decent points the rest of the year while he was competing with Melvin Gordon. Now he's got the backfield to himself. So let's take a look at their offensive line. They've got a decent offensive line. Bulaga from Green Bay's kind of, gets hurt a lot. Dan Feeney and Mike Pouncey. Mike Pouncey is a good center. You can't go wrong with him. And some of these other guys they've drafted over the last couple years. So they do have definitely a C+, B- offensive line. But his value is mostly in PPR leagues because people are going to want his pass receptions, which are close to 100. I mean, the guy's just a stud. And he does score touchdowns, and he does run the ball well. His backup or handcuff is right here, Justin Jackson. So if you do draft Austin Ekeler, you might want to consider coming down here and finding out where Justin Jackson's going, because I'll tell you right now, he won't get drafted. Justin Jackson will not get drafted early in any draft, and he'll be available late, and then you should go out and get him. So I do like Austin Ekeler this year. Let's go check out his average draft position. As you can see here, on Fantasy Football Calculator, Austin Ekeler's average draft position, this was the top 5 running back, maybe top 3 in a PPR league in most leagues last year, and he's going before Aaron Jones, which I would take Aaron Jones before I take him. So I'd be moving Austin Ekeler down in here at the more towards the end of round 2. His backup handcuff, Justin Jackson, is something where you can get later in the draft. You can see Justin Jackson down here is kind of in that round 12, 13 area. So you don't have, if you take Austin Ekeler, you don't have to worry about his handcuff till later in the draft. I like that aspect of that. So that's pretty good. So I would definitely consider taking Austin Ekeler middle or late 2nd round. And he's a good workhorse for the Chargers. Question is, are the Chargers going to be able to move the ball with Tyrod Taylor, Justin Herbert at quarterback? I like their defense, so I do think they're going to run the ball a lot this year. He'd be worth picking up in your draft, especially in a PPR league for sure. Let's go take a look at another workhorse running back I like from last year. His name is Josh Jacobs, and he plays for the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, here we are checking out the workhorse running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, and his name is Josh Jacobs. He had a decent year last year. If you take a look at his offensive line, Colton Miller, Incognito, Hudson, Jackson, Trent Brown, look, this is B+ kind of guys. This is a good offensive line. They're going to blow some holes in the defensive line, so I do like the running ability of Josh Jacobs. He's definitely a workhorse, and you should be considered drafting him. His handcuff up here, it says, is Devontae Booker or Lynn Bowden. There's some other people in the Raiders backfield that you should be knowing about who like to catch the ball out of the backfield. So you got to be really careful if you decide to take Josh Jacobs as to who the handcuff is. Other things I like about the Raiders this year, I mean, you got some decent, not great wide receivers. I mean, Ruggs is someone they drafted. Tyrell Williams, a veteran. This could be a sleeper pick for you in your drafts. Hunter Renfrow, Nelson Aguilar, and Zay Jones. These guys have been in the league for a while, some of these guys. So I'm expecting, especially with these tight ends too. Look at this, Darren Waller. Foster Moreau was a good tight end last year. And this old man, Jason Witten, still playing after all these years. He's going to foster some of these young guys. This could be a surprise team to make the playoffs. Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota. So they do have some depth at quarterback. So let's go take a look and see where Josh Jacobs is going in the average draft position. That'll help determine whether we can take him. Okay, here we are on the draft position draft board on Fantasy Football Calculator, and you can see right here Josh Jacobs is going in pretty much in the middle of the first round towards the end. I do like Josh Jacobs. I think this is about where he would be going. I probably would take Nick Chubb, Miles Sanders ahead of him, but I would take Josh Jacobs ahead of Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake. Josh Jacobs maybe end of first, beginning of second rounds where I got him going, so it's not too far off. But he's a good young player, but the offensive line for the Raiders is big, so I do like him. They're going to move the ball, and Josh Jacobs would be a good pick for you. I like him more in the end of the beginning of the second round, end of the first round. So if that's where he goes, you should go after him because he's going to have a good year. Let's take a look at another top 5 running back that's a workhorse running back, and he plays for the Minnesota Vikings, and his name is Dalvin Cook. Okay, Dalvin Cook is a phenomenal running back. Not only can he catch the ball out of the backfield, but he can run between the tackles. He's fast, he's shifty, but he does get hurt a lot. It's a risk to take him. He is considering holding out, so we'll see how that pans out. Not a good idea for him to miss a day because he'll get a $50,000 fine for every day he misses, and he could lose time, seniority, so he might not be an unrestricted free agent next year if he misses time. So he's probably going to show up for camp. But you know what? They ought to pay the guy. He's a pretty good running back. His backup handcuff is this guy who's also really good, Alexander Mattison. I would definitely be picking up Alexander Mattison if I was you and you drafted Dalvin Cook, because if you don't, you're going to wish you had, because he's a good player. Now, if you come over here and you take a look at the offensive line for these guys, you know, Riley Reif, Eflin, Bradbury, Dozer, O'Neal. I'm going to go with C+. I'm not saying this is a great offensive line. It's got some talent for sure. None of these guys excite me too much. They're going to run the ball. They've got a couple good tight ends in Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith, so they can put that 12 package in there where they're like 2 tight ends. They got a decent quarterback in Kirk Cousins. If you take a look at Dalvin Cook's scoring from last year, as you can see here, Dalvin Cook lit it up pretty good every week. This is why he's a top 5 running back. I mean, he did get hurt later in the year. That's when Alexander Mattison came in and played well. And if you're going to take this guy, you got to know something. He's worth the price. So I would consider taking him if I had a top 5 or 6 pick, because he's going to produce. Let's see where he's going on the average draft position sheet over on Fantasy Football Calculator. As you can see here, Dalvin Cook's going in the top 5 picks. That's about where I would be taking him. I like him more than I like Alvin Kamara. I would even take him over probably Michael Thomas. I'm not sure if I would take him before I would take Ezekiel Elliott. I would probably see who got taken ahead of me and decide. I like them both a lot. Dalvin Cook is a good player. Ezekiel Elliott is too. So as you can see down here, Alexander Madison is going in the 9th round. So if you do take Dalvin Cook, you got to take his handcuff, and you're going to have to spend a 9th round pick on a guy who's probably not going to play much for you. That's a tough spot right there. Okay, let's take a look at another workhorse running back. It's down in New Orleans, and his name is Alvin Kamara. Okay, here we are taking a look at a workhorse running back who had basically an off year last year. I mean, I had him on a team, and going into like week 14, I don't think he scored a single touchdown. He was hurt a lot, so that may have had something to do with it, but he's on a really good team. He's got a good veteran quarterback in Drew Brees, and let's take a look at his offensive line. I mean, Armstead, Pete, McCoy, Ruiz is a rookie, Ramczyk. I mean, these are good players. He's gonna get to run the ball behind a good offensive line. He's got some decent tight ends in Jared Cook, and these guys here are not too bad. And his wide receivers, they finally got a number 2 wide receiver from Michael Thomas, who's the best wide receiver in the league, at least last year. Manuel Sanders, he's a veteran. Can't go wrong with him. Not so sure about any of these other guys. But the thing you better know about Alvin Kamara is you got to have his handcuff, Latavius Murray. When I had Kamara on my team last year, I had his handcuff, and I didn't miss a beat. Murray was scoring me 20 points a week while Kamara was hurt. So you got to have his handcuff. We'll take a look and see where we can get him in your draft. So if you look at Alvin Kamara's points from last year, these are the point totals for Alvin Kamara last year. 23, 37. As you can see, kind of was dealing with an ankle injury after this, missed some time, came back, and even though he wasn't scoring touchdowns, he was still scoring points. As you can see right here, this is when he scored his first touchdown. I guess in week 3 it says he had a rushing touchdown. I don't remember that, but he had 1 touchdown going into week 16. That's tough to swallow if you drafted Alvin Kamara like I did in the top 5 picks last year. He does catch a lot of balls receiving. That's how he makes his points. So in a standard league, you might be even farther down your draft board, but look at that, 8, 10, 9. That's how he gets his points, and that's why we'd be taking Alvin Kamara as a top 5 pick in a PPR league in 2020. Let's see where he is on the average draft position sheet. Okay, here we are looking at Alvin Kamara. Fantasy Football Calculator, 12-man PPR has him going number 4, ahead of Dalvin Cook, who's threatening the holding out, ahead of Derrick Henry, ahead of Ezekiel Elliott. I'd have probably all 3 of these guys ahead of Alvin Kamara. Maybe, it just depends. It's a PPR league, so that's where it's important. Alvin Kamara had a bad wheel last year. It probably never recovered, so he probably does deserve to be a top 5 pick. And as you can see right here, Latavius Murray is his handcuff, and he's going in round 9. So you're going to have to spend a premium pick on his handcuff, so keep that in mind. So that's why I kind of like, maybe Ezekiel Elliott a little bit more. You don't have to spend that premium pick on a handcuff. That's important, so don't forget that. Okay, we got a handful of workhorse running backs to take a look at. And the next one we're going to take a look at is this guy for the New York Giants. You know who that is. Let's go check it out. Okay, here we are checking out the workhorse running back for the New York Giants. This guy, Saquon Barkley. Look, he's going as a top 1, 2, 3 pick in most leagues, whether it's standard or PPR. He's a stud. He's going to have a big year. As you can see right here, this is the offensive line that he's playing behind. I think that it's definitely better than it was last year. It is a decent C+, B- offensive line. He's got some great people surrounding him. Look at this core here, man. Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. All these guys are going to get drafted in your draft. He's got good tight ends in Evan Ingram and Caden Smith. Don't rule out Caden Smith getting some playing time. I'll tell you what, man, that guy was putting up some points at the end of last season when Evan Ingram was hurt. You should look up what Caden Smith did last year. And when Saquon Barkley is healthy, he puts up a lot of points. I'm not even going to show you his points because he will. He was hurt last year, played on a bum ankle, so it's kind of deceiving as to the points he was scoring. But when he's healthy, this kid's probably the best running back. Him and Christian McCaffrey, easy 1-2. So let's see where he's going in your average draft position chart over on Fantasy Football Calculator. As you can see here, Saquon Barkley is going number 2 overall. We're not too worried about his handcuff, Dion Lewis or Wayne Gallman. They're probably not on this draft position sheet anywhere because they don't need to be. If you draft Saquon Barkley number 2 overall, you should probably have Wayne Gallman or Dion Lewis on your team because if he misses any time, these are the guys going to be picking up the slack when he's gone. But I expect a big year from Saquon Barkley. I think you should take him as your 2nd or 3rd pick in your draft, and you'll have a good year. Let's take another look at another New York running back that hasn't played very well last year and missed the year before, and his name is LeVeon Bell. Okay, here we are looking at LeVeon Bell, the workhorse running back for the New York Jets. They did pick up Frank Gore. I'm not too concerned about Frank Gore. I mean, he's over 35 years old. I'm not sure why they brought him in. The coach Gase had him down in Miami, so he does like him. He's going to get some playing time. But I still think Le'Veon Bell is a workhorse. Anytime you get 65% of the carries, you're a workhorse, and that's what's going to happen with Le'Veon Bell. The offensive line in front of Le'Veon Bell has gotten better. I mean, Becton's a rookie. Lewis McGovern from Denver is good. Brian Winters is a good guard. And, if they can get any production out of the right tackle, it's a better offensive line than it was last year. That's what it's going to come down to. Sam Darnold's going to be there all year. He was sick at the beginning of last year, missed almost 2 months. So they got off to a slow start. I don't expect that to happen this year. And they've got some decent wide receivers, nothing I'd write home to. But, Broussard Perriman is someone I'd be looking at later in my draft. Denzel Mims is a rookie. Jamison Crowder played for years for Washington. Had a ton of receptions last year. If he stays healthy, he could be a player. And Josh Doxson still has a lot to prove. Wouldn't be surprised to see him or Braxton Berrios step up to the plate. They've got a couple decent tight ends, guys you can get later in your draft, Christopher Herndon and Ryan Griffin. We'll see if any of those guys can play. Let's take a look and see where some of these guys are going, like Le'Veon Bell, in Fantasy Football's draft board ADP sheet. As you can see right here, this is Le'Veon Bell. He's going at the end of round 3, maybe even beginning of round 4. That's about where I would take him. I would consider taking him probably before I would take David Johnson. Maybe if Chris Carson's healthy, somewhere in that area. I do like him better than Melvin Gordon. So that's about where he should be going. I don't see Frank Gore anywhere on this average draft position sheet. So taking his handcuff later in the draft's no big deal. I would definitely take Frank Gore if you take Le'Veon Bell. Having your handcuff is very important, and you should do it. A lot of people don't, and it's a huge mistake. We've got a few more people we're going to take a look at, and we're going to call it a day. We've got to take a look down there in Philadelphia, and we got to look at one of my favorite players in this year's draft, and he's a total workhorse, and his name is Miles Sanders. Okay, we're looking at Miles Sanders, workhorse running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. Kid's going to get a lot of carries, I'm telling you that right now, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He had a decent rookie year for a guy that's not used to playing that many games. He's got behind probably one of the top 3 offensive lines. I mean, you look at it right here. I mean, Dillard, Samuel, Kelsey, Peters, who's in for someone who was hurt. I mean, they had a right guard here that was a Pro Bowler who got hurt, and Jason Peters stepped in, and now he's going to be the right guard. He used to play left tackle for this team and was a Pro Bowler, so hopefully that works out. And you got Lane Johnson, who's probably a Pro Bowler too. And I think that's one of the better offensive lines in football. So this guy's going to run the ball well. Boston Scott's the pass-catching running back, so you might want to have him as your handcuff, or Corey Clement, who's been on this team forever, never really done much. But I would have Boston Scott as my handcuff because he's going to play a lot if something happens to Miles Sanders. As you can see right here, they've got some old guys playing wide receiver and Jeffries and Jackson. They're no sure thing. Jeffries has been battling an injury, and Jackson, I don't know. He said some comments that got him in trouble, so we'll see if he's even on the team. But they do have some young players, and you should keep an eye on this guy right here. I told you about him. in our pre-draft special, Jalen Reagor. He's a rookie wide receiver. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside could play football. Greg Ward had a good end to the last year, so keep an eye on him. But where they like to throw the ball to is at tight end, at Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. So they'll play that 12-man thing where they get 2 tight ends in there and just pound the ball. That's why we like Miles Sanders. Let's take a look and see what he did last year. As you can see here, Miles Sanders started out slow, had some double-digit points here, had his typical rookie year, and then when he started getting the ball a lot, he started putting up some decent points. Wasn't the world's greatest rookie year, but he did play hurt a lot, and a lot of people are expecting big things from him. And the best thing about it is, who's he competing with? I mean, if Philadelphia signs Devontae Freeman or something, or LaShawn McCoy, yeah. But right now, I don't see anybody competing for time with Miles Sanders. Let's go take a peek and see where his ADP is. Okay, as you can see here, here's Miles Sanders' ADP. He's going at the beginning of round 2, end of round 1. It's a little high for me. I probably have him down here more in this after Aaron Jones kind of thing, because I do like these running backs better, Austin Ekeler and Aaron Jones. I like Nick Chubb, but I would take Miles Sanders before I took Kenyon Drake, and I would consider taking him even before I took Joe Mixon. I don't like where those guys are on this ADP sheet. And if you come down here, his handcuff, Boston Scott isn't getting drafted till around 11 or 12. So the handcuff thing's not going to cost you a ton of capital in your draft. We've got a couple more running backs we're going to show you. We're going to call it quits. But these 2 running backs we're going to show you are also workhorse running backs you should consider drafting. And as you can see, a lot of these running backs are going early in drafts. That's why they're considered workhorse running backs. Let's take a look at the Seattle running back. If he's healthy, Chris Carson. So here we are looking at a borderline workhorse running back. As you can see here, Chris Carson's going to compete for time with Carlos Hyde and Rashad Penny. But Rashad Penny's not even going to come back. He's probably going to be on the PUP list, which means he can't play till after Game 6. Carlos Hyde's basically a backup who's going to get a little playing time if Chris Carson isn't healthy or gets hurt. But I do like Chris Carson. He had a good year last year before he got hurt. They've got some good wide receivers on this team. They're going to throw the ball to. Russell Wilson's a quarterback. Greg Olsen came in along with, Luke Wilson and Jacob Hollister, are decent tight ends. And you've got, I'd say, a C- type of offensive line. Dwayne Brown is a former All-Pro, but the rest of these guys, I just not so sure. I would have upgraded my offensive line. So he's going to be running behind like a C- type offensive line. That's concerning. So I'm not exactly sure where to draft Chris Carson. We'll have to take a look at what his ADP is, but we'll see what his points were for last year. And as you can see right here, you really can't complain about this guy. 24, and then he kind of had a couple bad weeks, but then he just took off. He had a bunch of good weeks in a row, and all the way up until he got hurt in week 15, 16. But up until then, he was playing well. He had a ton of receptions. I mean, the guy caught 6 balls there, 4 balls there, 3. I mean, just he can catch the ball in the backfield. So I do like Chris Carson. I would let him fall to me in a draft. But let's go over and check out and see where his average draft position is. As you can see over here on the average draft position chart, Chris Carson's going in the middle of round 3. I personally would probably be drafting him later, like maybe in here, like after Jonathan Taylor. I do like Le'Veon Bell and Jonathan Taylor more than Chris Carson. I would even take Cooper Kupp before I took him. So I would have him probably down here more before David Johnson. I would probably consider that end of the 4th round, but he's going way high. Plus, he's got some competition in the backfield. So I'm talking end of the 4th round. So he's probably not going to get drafted by me very often, simply because he's coming back from an injury on a bad offensive line, and he's going too high. He's a workhorse running back because, down here's his backups or handcuffs. Carlos Hyde's not going to round 14 here, and Rashad Penny's going to be on the PUP list to start the year. So they have no choice but to play him a lot. I just don't see him producing as much as I would want for a mid-3rd round pick, especially when you have other players like Le'Veon Bell, Jonathan Taylor, David Johnson, Mark Ingram, and Melvin Gordon on the board. I'd put him after all those guys. Well, we got one more workhorse running back, and he just happens to have led the league in rushing for the Tennessee Titans, and his name is Derrick Henry. Okay, here we are checking out the workhorse running back for the Tennessee Titans. And he led the league in rushing last year. On the last game of the season, he beat out Nick Chubb by just a few yards by having over 200 yards rushing in his last game last year, and it's Derrick Henry. I wouldn't be too worried about his backups. I have no idea who these guys are. Nobody does. He's got some decent wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, who has yet to produce. Adam Humphries is a good player. Keep an eye on these tight ends, man. Everybody's calling for Jonnu Smith to be number one tight end this year. So later in the draft, you may want to consider taking him as a backup tight end, maybe a second or third tight end on your team. But look at this offensive line. Pretty good. Luan, Saffold, Ben Jones, Ned Davis. Here's your real problem. Dennis Kelly, Isaiah Wilson, Ty Sambrilla. They lost their all-pro to Cleveland. He went over there and signed with Cleveland, so they're going to be a little weak on the right side. So we'll see how that pans out. Might be more of a problem for the quarterback than it is for Derrick Henry. But Derrick Henry's going to get the ball 20-25 times a game. He's got a contract extension, and he's a player. If you don't believe me, let's take a look at his stats from last year. I mean, look what this guy did. I mean, 28, 17, 11, 13. That's a really bad games before he started picking it up. And man, when he started picking up steam in rounds, weeks 9, 10, look at that, 20, 20, 20. Then they basically didn't play him much in these two games here. I mean, against Houston they did, but apparently didn't need to against New Orleans. Had a big week against Houston. Look at that. Jeez, 3 touchdowns. I mean, wild card game, divisional. I mean, this kid was tough. So I could see why people are taking him early in drafts. He does not catch the ball, as you can see right here. These are his targets in this column here. And his receptions were next to not very good. He's just not a guy that catches the ball out of the backfield. So in PPR, he's going to struggle a little bit. But let's go check out the ADP and see where he's being drafted. As you can see over here on this ADP sheet, Derrick Henry's going in the 6th pick overall, maybe 7th pick, 8th pick, somewhere in that. I would take him before I would take some of these pass-catching running backs because he's for sure going to get a ton of points just rushing the ball. I would take him in that maybe 8, 9 spot on this average draft position sheet. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't be too concerned about his handcuff. You'll have to figure that out once the season starts because nobody knows really who his backup is at this point. I'll have to wait till later in the year. There you have it. Those are just some of the running backs that are available to you in the upcoming NFL season. All we're trying to do here is help you figure out the pieces to the puzzle to win a championship in the 2020 NFL season. I'm Buster Brown. The show, it's called Redemption Rehab. Good luck.